I carefully tucked Wei Lin's latest poem beneath my mattress, my heart still racing from our stolen moments the night before. He had whispered verses about eternal devotion while we held each other in secret, making promises we both knew were dangerous. We had been meeting in secret for nearly 8 months now, ever since that autumn day when I first encountered him in the pavilion by the lotus pond. What began as innocent conversations about poetry and philosophy had blossomed into something far more dangerous and infinitely more precious. "Young lady," Wei Lin called softly from outside my chamber, "your father requests your presence in the main hall." I smoothed my robes and tried to calm my racing pulse. Father rarely summoned me so formally, and never this early in the morning. I found him waiting in the grand hall, his expression grave, yet strangely triumphant. My stomach clenched with an inexplicable dread. "Yunshi," he began, using my name instead of the usual formal address, "the king has bestowed upon our family the highest honor imaginable." I knelt before him as custom demanded, but my mind was already racing with possibilities, none of them good. "You are to wed Prince Yu Cheng," he announced. "The ceremony will take place in 3 months' time." The words hit me like physical blows. My vision blurred, and for a moment I thought I might faint. Prince Yu Cheng, the warrior prince everyone whispered about with admiration and fear. The man who collected beautiful things like trophies. "Yes, father," I managed to whisper, though the words felt like ash in my mouth. After he dismissed me, I fled to my chambers where Wei Lin waited anxiously. She took one look at my face and immediately closed the door behind us. "What news, young lady?" she asked, though I think she already knew from my expression. "I am to marry Prince Yu Cheng," I said, my voice breaking on the words. Wei Lin's face paled. She alone knew about my secret meetings with Wei Lin, though I had never dared tell her the full depth of my feelings. "Oh, young lady," she whispered, rushing to embrace me as I finally allowed the tears to fall. That night, I waited in agony until the household fell silent, then slipped through the shadows to our usual meeting place in the moon garden. Wei Lin was already there, pacing anxiously among the night-blooming jasmine. "Yunshi," he breathed, rushing to take my hands in his. "I heard the news from the palace. Tell me it isn't true." "I wish I could," I whispered, allowing him to pull me into his arms. 3 months, Wei Lin. In 3 months, I'll belong to another man." He held me tightly against his chest, and I felt the rapid beating of his heart match my own desperate rhythm. "We'll run away," he said suddenly, his voice fierce with determination. "Tonight.
Now.
We'll leave this place and never look back." "Where would we go?" I asked, though part of me wanted to say yes immediately. "You have no wealth, no connections. They would find us within days." "Then we'll go somewhere they can't follow," he insisted. "The southern kingdoms, across the sea. Anywhere but here." I pulled back to look at his beloved face, memorizing every feature in the moonlight. "My darling, you don't understand. If we run and they catch us, you'll be executed. If we run and they don't catch us, we'll spend our lives as fugitives, always looking over our shoulders." "Then what do you propose?" he asked desperately. "That I simply watch you marry another man? That I pretend my heart doesn't break every time I imagine you in his arms?" His words shattered what remained of my composure. I had been trying to be practical, reasonable, but he was right. The thought of belonging to Prince Yu Cheng, of bearing his children, of never again knowing Wei Lin's gentle touch, it was unbearable. "Give me time to think," I pleaded. "There must be another way." But even as I spoke the words, I knew there wasn't. Not in the world we lived in. Prince Yu Cheng arrived the following week with great ceremony, his retinue filling our estate's courtyard with the gleam of armor and the stamp of war horses. I knelt in the reception hall as father presented me to my betrothed, keeping my eyes fixed on the floor. "Lady Yunshi," the prince said, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "Rise and let me look upon my future wife." I stood slowly, finally lifting my gaze to meet his. He was undeniably handsome in the way of warriors, strong-featured, broad-shouldered, commanding. But his eyes, when they studied me, were cold and calculating, as if he were evaluating a prized horse. "Beautiful," he pronounced, as if I weren't standing right there. "She'll produce fine sons." The casual dismissal of my personhood stung, but I remained silent. "I've brought you gifts," he continued, gesturing to his servants. They stepped forward with boxes of jewelry, bolts of silk, and other luxurious items. Tokens of my favor. "You honor me, Your Highness," I replied as expected. The prince spent the afternoon discussing wedding arrangements with father while I served tea and remained silent. I observed how he spoke of me as if I were merely another detail to be managed, like the flower arrangements or the feast menu. As he prepared to leave, Prince Yu Cheng surprised me by requesting a private moment. Father bowed deeply and withdrew, leaving us alone in the reception hall. "Lady Yunxi," the prince said, his tone suddenly less formal. "I want you to speak honestly with me. What are your thoughts on this marriage?" The unexpected question caught me off guard. For a moment, I saw what might have been genuine interest in his eyes, a hint of the kind prince everyone claimed he was. "Your Highness," I began carefully, "may I truly speak without fear of offense?" "You may," he assured me. "I prefer honesty to false flattery." Perhaps it was exhaustion, or desperation, or simply the hope that he might understand. Whatever the reason, I made a terrible mistake. "If I am to be completely honest," I said quietly, "I had hoped to marry for love, not duty. There is someone else I care for deeply." The change in Prince Yu Cheng was immediate and terrifying. The mask of kindly interest vanished, replaced by something cold and predatory. His hand shot out to grip my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to make his point clear. "Someone else," he repeated softly, dangerously. "Who?" I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Your Highness," I spoke foolishly. "No," he interrupted, his voice still quiet, but filled with menace. "You spoke truthfully." "Who is he?" "It doesn't matter," I whispered, fear making my voice shake. "He is no one of importance." Prince Yu Cheng's smile was like a blade. "Oh, but it matters very much to me. You see, Lady Yunxi, I don't share. Ever. What's mine stays mine, completely and absolutely." He released my wrist and stepped back, his expression shifting back to polite interest so smoothly I might have imagined the entire exchange. "We'll discuss this further after our wedding," he said pleasantly. "Until then, I suggest you forget this foolish infatuation. It would be unfortunate if anyone were to get hurt because of your divided loyalties." The threat was unmistakable. I bowed deeply, not trusting my voice to remain steady. After he left, I remained kneeling on the floor long after his footsteps faded, trembling with the realization of what I had done. I had seen the real Prince Yu Cheng, and he was not the benevolent warrior everyone believed him to be. He was possessive, dangerous, and now he suspected the existence of my beloved Wei Lin. That night, I waited until the darkest hours before dawn to meet Wei Lin in the Moon Garden. He took one look at my face and immediately drew me into his arms. "What happened?" he demanded. "You look terrified." I told him everything, the prince's question, my foolish honesty, and the unveiled threat that followed. Wei Lin's face grew darker with each word. "He knows," he said grimly. "He may not know my name, but he knows I exist." "I'm so sorry," I whispered against his chest. I thought perhaps if he understood. "You thought he might be reasonable," Wei Lin finished. "You couldn't have known he would react like that. But now what do we do? He'll be watching me, searching for any sign of you. We can't meet like this anymore." Wei Lin was quiet for a long moment, his arms tight around me. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with quiet determination. "We run. Tomorrow night." "Wei Lin." "Listen to me," he interrupted gently but firmly. I've been making inquiries quietly. There's a merchant ship leaving from Lotus Harbor in 4 days, bound for the southern kingdoms. The captain is flexible about passenger manifests if the price is right. I pulled back to look at him. You've already been planning this. Since the moment I heard about your betrothal, he admitted. I couldn't just stand by and watch you be given to that monster. But the risks are nothing compared to the certainty of what happens if you marry him. Yunxi, did you see what he did when you mentioned loving another? That's not a man who will be content with your obedience. He'll spend the rest of your marriage trying to break you, to ensure you never even think of anyone else. The terrible truth of his words settled over me like a shroud. I had seen something inhuman in Prince Yu Cheng's eyes, a possessiveness that bordered on madness. What about Zealand? I asked suddenly. If I disappear, they'll question her first. Father will assume she helped me escape. Then she comes with us, Wei Lin said without hesitation. I have enough saved for 3 passages barely. She would leave everything for me? Ask her, he suggested. But I think you already know the answer. He was right. Zealand had been more than a servant. She had been my friend, my confidant, my protector in a world that offered women little protection. Tomorrow night, I agreed, the words feeling like both a death sentence and a liberation. After the household sleeps. Zealand's reaction to our plan was immediate and unwavering. Of course I'll come with you, young lady, she said firmly. Do you think I would let you face this alone? But your family will understand, she interrupted. My loyalty is to you always. The next day passed in excruciating slowness. I went through the motions of normal routine while my heart hammered against my ribs. Every sound made me jump. Every glance from a servant made me wonder if they suspected. Father noticed my distraction at dinner. You seem nervous, daughter, he observed. Pre-wedding anxiety is natural, but you must not let it overwhelm you. Prince Yu Cheng is a fine match. Yes, father. I replied automatically, the words like poison on my tongue. That night, I lay in my bed fully clothed, a small bag of essentials hidden beneath my pillows. Zealand had already moved our meager belongings to the servants' quarters, ready to slip out through the kitchen entrance. When the deepest part of night finally arrived, I rose silently and crept to the predetermined meeting spot near the garden wall. Wei Lin was already there with Zealand, both of them carrying small packs. Ready, he whispered, taking my trembling hand. I looked back at the estate where I had spent my entire life, knowing I would never see it again. Then I looked at Wei Lin's beloved face and knew that any future with him was worth this sacrifice. Ready, I whispered back. We made our way through the darkened streets of the city, keeping to shadows and side alleys. Wei Lin led us with surprising confidence. Apparently his planning had included memorizing escape routes. By dawn, we had reached the small inn where Wei Lin had arranged for us to wait until our ship departed. The innkeeper, a weathered woman with kind eyes, asked no questions as she led us to a tiny room at the back of the building. The boat leaves before sunrise tomorrow, Wei Lin explained quietly. Captain Chen will meet us at the dock at the 4th hour. We spent the day in tense waiting, starting at every sound from the street. I found myself alternating between exhilaration at being free and terror at what we had done. No regrets. Wei Lin asked during one of our whispered conversations. None, I replied firmly. Whatever happens, at least we'll face it together. But even as I spoke the words, I felt the cold touch of premonition. Our escape had been too easy, too clean. Men like Prince Yu Cheng didn't simply let their possessions slip away into the night. My fears proved justified. We were awakened before midnight by the sound of horses in the inn's courtyard. Wei Lin was at the window instantly, his face grim in the moonlight. Soldiers, he whispered. At least a dozen. We have to go now. Zealand was already gathering our few belongings while I struggled to make sense of my terror. How had they found us so quickly? The innkeeper appeared at our door, her face tight with worry. There's a back way, she whispered urgently. Through the kitchen and into the alley. Go. We slipped through the building like shadows, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain the soldiers would hear it. Behind us, I could hear voices as the prince's men questioned the innkeeper. The alley was narrow and dark, filled with the refuse of the city. We picked our way carefully through the muck, trying not to make any sound. The forest, Wei Lin breathed in my ear. If we can reach the tree line, we can hide until morning. But as we emerged from the alley, shouts erupted behind us. We had been spotted. There, the woman in blue. We ran. Through empty market squares, down twisting streets, past shuttered houses where honest people slept. Behind us, the sound of pursuit grew louder. Hoofbeats, shouting voices, the clink of armor. My silk slippers, so elegant in the drawing room, were utterly unsuited for running. I stumbled repeatedly, only Wei Lin's strong arm keeping me upright. Almost there, he panted as the dark line of trees appeared ahead of us. We plunged into the forest just as the first arrows began to whistle past our heads. The soldiers had orders to kill Wei Lin, that much was clear. They wanted me alive, but they cared nothing for the life of the man who had stolen the prince's property. In the darkness of the woods, we had some advantage. The soldiers' horses couldn't navigate the dense undergrowth as easily as we could on foot. But they knew these woods too, and they spread out to surround us. This way, Wei Lin whispered, leading us deeper into the trees. We ran for what felt like hours, our breath coming in ragged gasps, our clothes torn by branches and thorns. Zilan, despite her terror, kept pace without complaint. Just when I thought we might have lost them, an arrow took Wei Lin in the shoulder. He stumbled, crying out in pain, and I caught him as he fell to his knees. Wei Lin, I whispered frantically. Blood was spreading across his scholar's robe, black in the moonlight. The arrow had gone deep. I'm all right, he gasped, though clearly he wasn't. Keep moving. With Zilan's help, I got him back on his feet. He leaned heavily on my shoulder as we continued through the trees, but his pace was slowing dangerously. Behind us, the voices of our pursuers were getting closer. We stumbled out of the forest near the harbor just as the eastern sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn. The docks stretched ahead of us, a maze of piers and moored vessels. Somewhere among them waited Captain Chen and our passage to freedom. But Wei Lin was failing. The arrow had worked deeper into his shoulder, and he had lost too much blood. He could barely stay conscious, leaning most of his weight on Zilan and me. Where? I gasped to Zilan. Which ship? The one with the blue sail. Wei Lin mumbled weakly. Pier 7. We half carried him toward the designated meeting point, but our progress was agonizingly slow. Behind us, I could hear the soldiers emerging from the tree line. We had minutes at most before they spotted us among the docks. Young lady, Zilan whispered urgently. They're going to catch us. I looked at Wei Lin's pale face, at the blood still seeping through his clothes, then back at the soldiers spreading out behind us. The terrible mathematics of our situation became clear. If we tried to reach the ship together, they would catch all three of us. If they found us at the docks, no captain would risk taking fugitives aboard. Our escape would end here, and Wei Lin would die for nothing. But if they were chasing me, listen to me, I said quietly to Zilan, stopping in the shadow of a warehouse. Can you get him to the ship alone? Young lady, what are you thinking? They're here for me, I explained, my voice surprisingly calm despite the terror in my heart. The prince wants me back. If I lead them away from the docks, you can get Wei Lin on that ship. No, Wei Lin whispered, struggling to focus on my face. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. My darling, I said, touching his cheek gently. You're going to live. That's all that matters now. Yunshi, promise me. I turned to Zilan. Promise me you'll get him safely away from here. No matter what happens to me, promise me he lives. Tears streamed down Zilan's face, but she nodded. I promise, young lady. I could see the soldiers now, methodically checking each pier. They would find us within minutes. I kissed Wei Lin once, softly, memorizing the feel of his lips against mine. I love you, I whispered. Remember that always. Then I stood and walked out from behind the warehouse, directly into the soldiers' line of sight. There she is, one of them shouted. Lady Yunxi. I ran in the opposite direction from Pier 7, leading them away from my beloved and my faithful friend. Behind me, I heard the thunder of pursuing hoofbeats. I had perhaps 50 yards before they would catch me, but it would be enough. Enough for Zealand to get Wei Lin aboard that ship. Enough for him to escape to a life of freedom, even if it was a life without me. The soldiers surrounded me near the harbor master's office. I fell to my knees, gasping, no longer able to run. Lady Yunxi, their captain said, dismounting from his horse. By order of His Highness Prince Yu Cheng, you will return with us immediately. Yes, I whispered, not even trying to resist as they bound my hands. I will return. As they loaded me onto a horse, I caught a glimpse of the harbor through the growing dawn light. A ship with a blue sail was pulling away from Pier 7, its sails filling with the morning breeze. My heart soared even as fresh tears fell down my cheeks. He was safe. Whatever else happened, Wei Lin was safe. As we rode back toward the capital and whatever punishment awaited me, I found a strange peace settling over my spirit. The soldiers expected me to weep, to beg, to rage against my fate. Instead, I felt almost serene. I would return to Prince Yu Cheng. I would endure whatever consequences he deemed appropriate for my attempt to escape. I would probably spend the rest of my life in a golden cage, watched and guarded, never again knowing freedom. But in the growing light of dawn, somewhere on the open sea, the man I loved was breathing. He was alive and free, sailing toward a future I would never share. Zealand would care for him as he healed, would help him build a new life in lands far from here. The prince would rage, would punish, would seek to break my spirit as he had threatened. He might succeed. I was not nearly as strong as I pretended to be, but he could never touch the part of me that belonged to Wei Lin. That sanctuary in my heart would remain inviolate, no matter what he did to my body or my mind. In that secret place, I would always be free, always be loved, always be the woman who chose sacrifice over safety. The sun rose higher as we traveled, warming my back despite the shackles on my wrists. Somewhere, Wei Lin was seeing the same sun, breathing the same air. As long as that remained true, I could bear anything. Love, I realized, was not just joy and passion and stolen moments in moonlit gardens. Sometimes love was letting go. Sometimes it was choosing another's life over your own happiness. Sometimes it was walking willingly into a cage so that the bird you cherished most could fly free. I had learned the deepest truth of love. It was not about having, but about giving. And I had given everything I had to give. It was enough.